Mm-mm.
Ano ko siya
Dito pwede. Kunin mo yung isang phone mo. Kailangan nakaganyan siya. Perfect. Bakit ganyan? Wait. Ito ang ganda. Ito na. Good morning po. Walang sound. Maybe? Oh, they're asking for you. Here. Yes. Natanong mo na siya? Yes, you are, sir.
Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to today's learning session with Vibal. Let's begin in 5 minutes, shall we? Let's just wait for the others. The time now is around 9:50, so let's begin by 9:55. Thank you.
Hindi ko nakakapture lahat. Hindi nakakapture lahat.
O hindi makikita yung papa. Start na siguro ako. 9:55. May lag.
Paano pag walang question? Pag walang questions?
Okay, I think we're all set. Good morning mga kabibal. I'm Daryl Wyson and I'll be facilitating today's live learning session here at the Vibal Group homepage. Thank you so much for watching and shout out to all of you, to all our participants from different parts of the Philippines and I guess even abroad. I think we do have participants coming from overseas and it's so nice to be here with you on a wonderful Tuesday morning. I hope that you're all safe, you're all okay. So today, we're going to be talking about this topic, making the most out of authentic materials. But before that, let's get to some housekeeping business first, okay? I'd like to remind you of how to get your certificates, okay? So, okay, how do you get your certificates? First, watch and share today's live learning session and use your key takeaways with hashtag LearnAs1PH as your caption, okay? After which, you take a screenshot of your post and then send a screenshot to Vibal through PM so that they can give you your certificate, okay? I hope that everything's clear. Again, just watch and share today's live learning session, share your key takeaway, take a screenshot of your post and send it to Vibal via PM. Okay, I guess we're all set. So today, we'll talk about making the most out of authentic materials. Let me begin today's discussion by, with this statement. Thank God for textbooks, okay? I'm sure that pretty much all of us, while we were studying, and even perhaps today, we've all been using textbooks, okay? We've all been using textbooks for so many purposes. As students, it's so nice to have a textbook because it gives us that sense of structure, it gives us that nice feel that there is a nice scope and sequence to all our lessons. Okay, we know what lesson 1 is, lesson 2 is, what our coverage is, and so textbooks give us that kind of structured learning material. Okay, so in that sense, they are very helpful. Furthermore, textbooks are also aligned, especially our Vibal textbooks, they're also aligned with the competencies set by the Department of Education. So therefore, if you look for a particular lesson in the textbook, you can find the correspondence to that learning competency right away. Okay? So in that sense, textbooks are helpful. And you know what? Textbooks are not used, of course, not just in English. Okay? So textbooks are used all throughout, and because textbooks are used all throughout, then it goes to say that all of us are also literacy teachers. Okay? Yes, for sure, to help your students learn math, social sciences, Filipino, okay, or whatnot, okay, maybe more advanced subjects such as psychology, economics, all of those subjects out there, all of your kids need to read, okay? And as such, if they need to read, then of course, it is imperative that as teachers, we would also scaffold them, we would also help them so that we can help they will be able to effectively and efficiently access our different materials to maximize the learning experience. That is one of the reasons why reading is considered a very important skill, a core skill. Because again, it cuts across the curriculum. Okay? And I believe that this topic for today is relevant not just for English teachers or Filipino teachers, but of course, Filipino and English teachers are the ones of the primary job to nurture the literacy skills of our kids. But nonetheless, all of us as teachers, we have the task to help kids improve in their reading skills. Okay? So, therefore, we can say that everything communicates. Okay? Everything communicates. Why? Look at the signs out there. Look at your lesson material. Look at your advertisements, news stories. Everywhere you look at, okay, there is a very, everything that you see around you is a potent instructional tool. Of course, textbooks give us that structure, okay, but then again, all materials out there can be a potential tool for teaching literacy. Let's take into consideration, for instance, this sign. Can you read this sign? What does it say? Okay. Perhaps you've seen signs similar to this when you visited a mall, or if a mall would allow people to bring pets. Okay. Probably you've read the sign, dogs must be carried on escalator. Of course. Okay. What is your initial uptake of this sign? You would think that it means that if you have a dog with you, and if you're going to board an escalator, then it is imperative that you carry your dog with you, or else the mall guards will try to, accost you for bringing the pet. Okay? However, if you think about it, you can also read this sign in a different way. Dogs must be carried on escalator. Does this mean then that, can we interpret this sign as if you don't bring a dog to the escalator, you will be banned from taking on that escalator? So you see, even a very simple sign such as this one is a very rich learning tool. For example, in semantics, okay, in syntax, okay, how does the arrangement of words influence meaning? So a very simple sign like this can be a very powerful learning tool. And of course, here in the Philippines, we are very, very rich. We are very replete with a lot of signs, with a lot of, things going on around us. Okay? So for instance, this, Baywash. For the 90s kids like me, maybe when you hear the word Baywash or Baywatch, okay, you would think of that lifeguard group, led by David Hasselhoff back in the 90s. But we are so creative. You see, this one is what we call a pun, right? Baywatch or Baywash. Okay? So Baywash is actually if you look at the sign closely, it's a car wash, right? But it has that, nice 90s ring to it. Okay? Like as if that David Hasselhoff thing. That's why, that's what makes it more palatable for us. Because it is actually alluding to something else. How about this one? If you want to do your laundry, then why don't you try to, visit this store located somewhere in UP Diliman. It's called Lord of the Rings. Okay? Which is, of course, both an allusion and a pun, a word play on the epic novel of Tolkien, which is Lord of the Rings. No? This time it's Lord of the Rings. No? So kung meron kayong gustong ipalaba, dito kayo sa Lord of the Rings. No? Very interesting. Okay? Even notice this little note below. It says, no mixing of clothes with other customers. What does it mean? Are you going to mix clothes with other customers? Like you're side by side with another customer, there's a pile of clothes, and you will just enjoy mixing all the clothes together? Or what they mean is that we, as a laundry shop, we are not going to mix and match the clothes, and for sure, we will return your clothes in good order, in proper order. Or this one, for example, living things. No? Living means a funeral, right? However, you can also read it as living. So it looks like it seems that it has an oxymoron in that sense, no? Living things, okay? Which is also a combination of a Filipino and an English word, code switching, okay? So, Diyos ko po. Diyos ko po, a Filipino expression sounding like Diyos ko po, no? And this one, of course, is repairing shoes. So what am I trying to say here? Everywhere you look all around you, you can find a lot of materials that you can use in your classroom in order to teach literacy skills. We've just looked at signboards, and what have we seen? We've seen puns, okay? We've seen an oxymoron. We've seen a lot of things already, okay? There's already a very rich, it's already a very rich material for teaching language, for teaching literature. And so, for today's session, okay, I'd like to share with you how we can maximize our use of authentic materials to supplement or augment whatever we are teaching through our textbooks. Okay? So by the end of the seminar, I hope that we'll be able to identify what an authentic material is. Okay? Use authentic materials across disciplines to improve literacy skills, and analyze an authentic material using a clear framework. Later on, I'd also like to talk about some theories that would inform the use of authentic materials, not just in English classroom, but across all classrooms. Okay? So, let's begin by defining the term authentic material. What makes a material authentic? Okay? A material, well, in terms of literature in applied linguistics, a material is considered as authentic, okay, if it is natural, meaning it is used in real-life communication settings. Okay? This means that this material is not something that we designed solely for our learners. Okay? They're out there existing and they are serving a functional purpose. For example, if you are going to watch an interview on television, then that can be considered as an authentic material. Okay? Interviews with celebrities such as Manny Pacquiao, Miss Universe, okay, can be a very rich material for discourse analysis, and hence, they can be said as authentic because they occurred in a real-life setting, say, a post-match interview or during the Miss Universe beauty pageant. So in that sense, these materials can be considered authentic because they are used in a real-life setting. But then again, we can import these materials in our own classroom and use it for our own purposes to teach, for example, how to conduct an interview properly. So that is an authentic material. On the other hand, okay, on the other side of the coin, what we have is what we call the instructional materials. For example, an instructional material may be, let's say, okay, for a beginning learner of English, okay, you have in one of the textbooks a CD-ROM, and in that CD-ROM, okay, there's a sample interview on how to introduce yourself. But that is actually made in order to teach non-native speakers of English on how to introduce themselves in a step-by-step manner. But of course, in real life, we do make alterations, we do make deviations to this formula. So, in a sense, that kind of piece that we see in the textbook is not the formula that we apply everywhere in real life. Okay? We can think of it this way. The material that we can find in the textbook would be the baseline material. It will illustrate the concept, the core principle, but authentic materials will show us how this principle is applied in real-life communication settings. So, that's the first definition, or that's the first trait of an authentic material. It is used in a naturalistic communication setting. Another definition, which I find a little bit contentious, is that an authentic material is designed for native speakers. Okay? By native speakers, okay, we don't know what we actually mean here. Okay? Normally, traditionally, when we say native speakers, we are referring to the white Western English speakers. For example, the speakers of the received pronunciation accent, if you want to call it accent, okay? The received pronunciation standard of the British, for example. Or you might be referring to a standard unaccented business English, the one that, for example, is being taught in call centers. Okay? So is that what we mean by native-like? Okay? What I say that this is a little bit contentious for two reasons. Number one, when we say native speakers, nowadays we don't only refer to people who are white, Western, European, or rather British or American in origin. Because you see, we live in a world with a lot of varieties of English. Okay? Even within the US, of course, the Southern Texan accent is different from the norms of Black English, for instance. Or here in the Philippines, we have our own brand of Philippine English. Singapore have their own English. And of course, they would also claim that a lot of their citizens, okay, have English as their native tongue. Only that that kind of English is not similar to how the British or the American, for instance, would use English. So you see, there are a lot of varieties of English, and so it becomes contentious, number one. Number two, in the Philippine context, where English for a lot of Filipinos is a second language, well, we use English in our day-to-day context nonetheless. Not just in conversations, but in official documents, in contracts, in books, journals, everywhere we use English. And hence, in that sense, we are still using English in an authentic sense, even in a Filipino setting, even in a Philippine ESL setting. Okay? But I think that one distinction that is very clear to all of us is that when we say it's an authentic material, this is a material that is designed not solely for the purpose of learning. Of course, we can learn from all of these authentic materials, but this is not something that we simply just inject into the curriculum. Okay? Now, what are the advantages of using authentic materials? Okay? What good is it if I'm going to use news articles, for example? Authentic news articles in teaching verbs, for instance. Okay. If you're going to teach verbs, for example, if you're going to teach the simple past tense, then I might as well use news articles, because normally a news article would employ the simple past tense. In this sense, students will have a grasp of how their actual learning material is used in the real world, in real life. Okay? As opposed to simply answering grammar questions without them knowing or appreciating why it's important to learn these things. So I believe that as a teacher, we have to teach our students to value, to realize how important it is, the importance of what they're learning, by making relevant connections to real life situations or real life contexts. So, according to research literature, there are several advantages of using authentic materials. Number one, it boosts learner motivation. Why? Because if learners are able to access and interact with authentic materials, then they are learning a language in a more purposeful sense. Okay? Also, an authentic material provides rich cultural information, okay, authentic cultural information about the people or the culture that language is portraying. Okay? As we've mentioned, we are exposing them to real life language at work. Okay? And when you use an authentic material, and as I shall demonstrate later, you are relating more to your learners' needs. Let me give you a case in point. For example, fake news. Okay, fake news is, well, everywhere. Okay, you open your social media account and there's fake news everywhere. So, if you take, for example, a fake news article, use it in class to teach it critical literacy. Okay, ask your students to look at the different features of a fake news article and then compare that fake news article with a genuine news article. Then you're already teaching your kids critical thinking. You're also teaching them language. You're also teaching them grammar, okay, proper use of sentences. Okay, you're also teaching them how to write informative texts properly. So, in that sense, okay, you are actually relating more to their needs. And of course, fake news is very relatable to them because it's all around them. And so are the signs, so are television shows, okay? So are a lot of other things, a lot of other materials that our kids are exposed to, okay? And of course, since authentic materials, well, probably we can say that there are infinitely many out there, it can support a more creative way or a more creative approach to teaching, okay? So there, just a caveat, okay? Authentic materials, okay, are derived from real life, language. And hence, they are very useful in the classroom because it will expose our students to real life language samples, to real life communication norms, to real life communicative activities. Nonetheless, remember that, again, authentic materials are not designed for structured instruction. So, if it's not structured, but of course our assessment tasks, our exams, they are designed in a very structured manner, they're aligned with the competencies set by our government, therefore, I would suggest that we use authentic materials in conjunction with our textbooks and other instructional materials which are aligned. Okay? So in that sense, you are using authentic material, the teacher's guide. We would advise you to look at different videos, audio materials in order to supplement the students' learning and of course your learning as well as teachers. Okay, so it goes to say that the textbooks and authentic materials go hand in hand in teaching our kids. Okay, the use of authentic materials is actually based on various pedagogical principles, and I'd like to name 3 of them. Okay, first is what we call as problem-based learning, which you probably encountered in a lot of seminars already. When we say problem-based learning, it means that you are using complex, real-world problems in order to address, as a vehicle for learning. Okay, so you are not simply giving them, for example, teaching them how to write a descriptive essay. You're not simply teaching them adjectives or order of adjectives, but you're showing them how you use that knowledge in order to solve a real life or authentic concern. Okay, let me give you a task that I gave to my kids like 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, as a summative task or as a performance-based task for adjectives, I asked them to write a promotional article for the school where they belong. Okay, so in that promotional article, of course, you would think that since it's a promotional article, an advertisement, then it will have to entice people to enroll in their school. So it actually allowed them to get to know their school better, okay, and then use adjectives effectively in order to convey, not just adjectives, even nouns and verbs, okay, in order to effectively convey to the potential market why they should enroll in their school, okay, and at the same time, it is aligned with the competencies that they need to learn. Okay? So, in that sense, learning about nouns, verbs, and adjectives become more meaningful because you just don't learn it, okay, in order to answer grammar exam successfully, but you learn it in order to do a real life task. Hence the connection between performance task and your lesson content. Okay? So that's one, problem-based learning. Another one will be the whole language instruction, wherein you try to integrate all their 4 linguistic macro skills. For some, we say that there are 5 linguistic macro skills, namely speaking, listening, reading, writing, and viewing, in order, again, to solve a real-life task. So this is my favorite, close reading. Okay? I often tell my students that if I can teach you how to close read properly, then I've done my job. And for me, I think this is the single most important skill that our students need to learn. I'm sure that we're all aware of the results of the latest PISA exam, and we all know the struggles of our students in terms of reading. So I would suggest that we train them with close reading in all lessons. Okay, we train them how to closely read text materials regardless of the content that we want them to learn. Okay, so close reading is an approach to teaching comprehension that insists that students extract meaning. Okay, so let's extract meaning by carefully examining the language as used in the passage. Okay, so much for the theoretical underpinnings and the rationale. Okay, let's now go to the more practical side. I'd like to share with you, okay, how I think we should choose an authentic material. Of course, there are so many materials out there for our choosing, but I would like to set some, standards, okay? And I'd like to use an acrostic, okay, so that these standards would be more memorable to us. Let's use the acrostic AIM. AIM, okay? A stands for appropriate, okay? When choosing material, make sure that it is appropriate to your learners. In what sense? 1, it is aligned with the learning objectives set by the Department of Education or set by your school, set by whatever governing body out there. So first, try to align, okay, the material that you're going to choose with the objectives. Okay, align it also with your kids' age. Okay, there might be times that you think that a material is appropriate, but if you think about it, you might have second thoughts, okay, on using this material. Let me give you an example, okay. Again, the decision is up to you, okay. For example, Neil Gaiman's American Gods. Very interesting novel. I think that it's a very powerful novel that will supplement learning about Greek mythology, okay, because it is Greek mythology set in contemporary times, okay. However, one caveat, okay, in that particular novel, you do have a lot of scenes which, you don't know how your kids will be able to process or take those scenes, okay? Because I think it is more geared toward a more adult audience or a more mature audience. So in that sense, okay, I might use that book for more mature students, but if I think that my students at their age cannot handle that kind of material yet, then I would use, for example, Percy Jackson instead, okay, to supplement their learning of Greek mythology as opposed to using Neil Gaiman's American Gods. Again, look at the age, the maturity of your students as well. Next would be your sensibilities, okay. Make sure that the materials you will choose will not offend any sensibilities, religious, cultural, social, or political sensibilities, because as teachers, we are trying to cater to our students regardless of their background, okay? We would like to offer education for all regardless of one's biases, okay? So A stands for appropriate. Next standard, I, interesting. Interesting. Will your students enjoy reading the material? So you ask yourself that. Now, will your students enjoy the material? Okay? For example, if you're teaching grade 8 Afro-Asian literature and you'd like to introduce Rashomon, which is a very sophisticated text, okay? Well, I would suggest that you start them, bit by bit, with something that they're already familiar with, interested in. For example, okay, I don't have any qualms about using Naruto in my English classes. And in fact, in my research class, a student wrote an entire paper comparing and contrasting the messianic figures okay, in Naruto and Harry Potter, and that makes for a very good literary research article. Why Naruto? Why Harry Potter? Well, it is it allows students to explore the literary piece in terms of its various elements. It is able to empower students by making comparisons, okay, and contrast between these two materials. But at the same time, we have to admit that Naruto and Harry Potter are simply fun, right? A lot of our kids love that, and so I don't have any qualms about using the two, okay, in my class. So because simply put, they're interesting. And even if actually these texts are quite long, because kids are interested in it, then they'll be more motivated to read them. Next would be M, meaningful. Is this important to them? You might choose an authentic material. Let's say, for example, a material about flat earth in your class. But ask yourself, okay, are your students even aware that there is such a thing as a flat earth movement? Are your students aware of conspiracy theories? Because if they're not, then maybe the authentic material will not work because it's not meaningful or important to them. Okay? Okay, there you go. So, how do we now analyze? How we do now dissect, okay, or analyze an authentic material? How are we going to use authentic material now in order to teach literacy skills? Let me propose another acrostic, swamps. Okay? So whenever we are confronted with a material, we can use the swamps. Well, these are just, words that, we can put together in order to form an acrostic so that it's, easier to remember. But basically, swamps would be a framework that we can use in order to analyze a certain text or any text at all. Okay? As we shall see later on, swamps may be used for basically anything. Swamps stands for S, situation, W, writer or the author, A for audience, M for medium, P for purpose, and S for style. Later on, I'll give you some guide questions that you can use to help your students process, analyze texts, okay, when they're using the SWAMPS model, okay. Some theoretical basis. Actually, if you look at this SWAMPS model, it is actually aligned with Harold Laswell's communication theory, okay. If you've been teaching oral poem, or you've taken poem classes in college, or poem theory or whatnot, okay, you might have encountered Harold Laswell's poem theory, which is like a basic theory, okay, a groundwork theory for the succeeding communication theories, okay. Simply put, Harold Laswell asks, who says what to whom, through which medium, and with what effect. So you're now looking at the entire communication continuum, starting from the sender, going to the receiver, and try to see how meaning is made, how meaning can be extracted through that communication situation. Okay? So let me now break down SWAMPS for you. S. Situation. What's going on in the communicative act? Okay, what's happening in there? In what context does the communicative situation occur? So what's going on? Okay? Like for example, if there's an anime produced, let's say Voltes 5, back in the 70s, okay? So you have to ask yourself, what could have been happening when Voltes 5 was produced, okay? Or why was Voltes 5 banned in the Philippines, for instance, during the martial law era? Maybe, those things can give you a little bit of background information as to, so to make more meaning out of the text. So S stands for situation, referring to the context, referring to the event surrounding the production, and maybe even the reception of the text. Writer, W stands for writer or author. Who produced the text? Okay? Maybe you can look into some background information about this writer, about this author, and not just about the author or writer. Maybe you can look at the zeitgeist of the times, what is going on, okay, when he wrote that particular piece, okay? You can also ask the possible motive, intention of the author for producing the text, okay? And maybe you could also examine how his or her background have influenced, okay, the shape of the text. A, audience. Okay? To whom is the text targeted? Background information, no? So you ask yourself, there's a text, who's my target audience, and what kind of response do I want to elicit from them? Okay? So you can also ask yourself how the audience would be likely to receive the text. By the way, just a clarification, the framework I'm using is applicable both to literary texts and non-literary texts. Okay? You can use them in analyzing novels, plays, poems, or you can even use them in analyzing signboards, advertisements, use articles, editorials, whatnot. So basically, it is like an overarching communication model which we can use in a universal sense. Okay. So next, M, medium. Okay. Marshall McLuhan once said, okay, that the medium is the message. Okay. The medium also influences how the message is packaged, and to a certain extent, even the content. For example, if I'm going to post news on Facebook, okay, definitely the way I'm going to package it will be much different. Probably there will be more pictures, more eye-catching photos, and the headline would be more, a little bit catchier than if I were just to, release it on print, okay? Which is, of course, probably for a more traditional audience, okay? As opposed to online, who are more tech-savvy, who are more in a hurry, etc. Okay? Next, P, purpose, content. Every communicative act would like to achieve something, so you have to ask yourself, what is it that, this communicative act aims to achieve? Okay? Last, style. Okay, here's the fun part. What are the devices? What are the different grammatical formulations, okay, that you can get out of the text, and how do these devices, how do the stylistic, grammatical, rhetorical, literary devices shape the text? This is where you teach your students to be nitty-gritty, okay? And you can, and this is the part where you teach your students, well, of course, it's also applicable in the previous parts, but in this portion, okay, you can teach them to think critically about the choices of the author, why a certain author chose to do this or do that, and what and its possible effect on their audience. So you see, swamps is actually interrelated, okay? Each letter is not mutually exclusive, but you can take a look at it in a holistic manner. Okay? So, let's practice. Okay, like what I told you earlier, anything is a text. So the first text that I'd like to show you would be, guess what? A credit card billing statement. Yes, anything can be used, even a credit card billing statement, an advertisement, etc. And you see, a credit card billing statement tells a lot of information, especially if you want to teach students how to interpret graphs, okay, tables. Probably a credit card statement is a very good place to begin with. Not to mention, of course, that you're also teaching students financial literacy by doing this. Okay, so let's look at the elements. Okay, if we look at the S, okay, situation. Okay, in what context is the credit card statement given? It is given at a certain period in a month, let's say the 15th, the 30th, etc. It is given to the client so that the client in turn will be able to pay his dues. So that's the intention behind it. And the purpose, okay, to make the client pay the dues. So we've already have S and P. Who's the writer? Who's the author? The writer or the author of the credit card statement account would be the credit card company. Of course, whose objective is for the company to earn, okay, to profit from this transaction. Okay? If you're wondering how a credit card works, of course, when you buy something, you swipe the credit card and use it to pay in lieu of actual cash. And then after paying, because technically you are not paying but you're only borrowing money from the credit card company, then when you start paying your bill, you need to put in some interest. Okay? So it's like, delaying the payment. Okay, that's the thing behind it. You can enjoy, you can gratify yourself now, while delaying the payment. Okay? Plus, okay, for you to be able to enjoy that delayed, payment, then you need to put in some interest. Okay? So there. So medium, paper. Although this can also be electronic. Okay? What else? Audience, of course. The audience would be the client. Okay? Purpose is to charge. And S, style. Now we get to style. Okay? So if you're going to take a look at the credit card, credit card statement of account, there are actually a lot of stories that you can already derive from it. For example, okay, you can look at the previous statement balance. This means that this is, okay, your previous balance would be the accumulated cost of your loan, okay, of the amount that you owe the credit card company. And then of course, okay, aside from that, you would see, okay, the payment of the client, the previous payment. Notice that the previous payment is only 750 pesos. Whereas, the balance is 24,129 pesos. So what does it tell you? It can tell you that this client is only paying the interest. Right? And, look at the finance charge. Okay? The client used the credit card only once to buy food from a supermarket. But look, okay, the amount acquired in this particular account is only 442 pesos. So he went to the grocery and bought goods that cost only 442 pesos, which is quite unlikely for a credit card. Now, are you now getting a story behind the user of this credit card? Okay, can we infer? Okay, take note of the operative term, infer, not conclude. Can we infer that this person who used the credit card may not have sufficient money at the moment, and that probably the salary of this person is not enough to cover the entire amount? At some point, this person may be jobless, for example, and use the credit card, and then once that person landed on a job, okay, the only thing that that person could pay would be the interest, no? So his salary allows him to pay only the interest, not the entire thing, which means that this person is in deep debt. Okay? Look at the finance charge. It's even bigger than the consumption supermarket. Now, the story gets even more interesting, okay? Aside from this statement of account, okay, there's also another, what they call this paper that the credit card company sent to the client. And it is this paper, okay? Greetings from blank, okay? Good news, you have increased your credit limit from 25,000 to 30,000. How does it begin? Good news. Okay, the letter begins with an encouragement. Okay? Take note, I'm the client, I am in deep debt, yet, okay, the letter to me begins with a note of encouragement. Okay? And look, the credit limit is even extended to 30,000 pesos. This limit is shared among all your credit cards. Keep using your credit card to enjoy exciting offers and exclusive promos. Enjoy. Look, it's a very positive word. Okay? A very jovial, jocund word. No? Enjoy. Exciting offers. Look, the use of alliteration. E. Enjoy, exciting. And both words are even, okay, creating that positive vibe in the client. Exciting offers and exclusive promos. Again, alliteration. Okay? The repetition of E in order to give me that positive feel, or to give the client that positive feel. And then after giving the client a positive feel, good news, enjoy, exciting offer, okay, there's now an instruction that says, download the deals app or visit blank for the latest deals. So it's now encouraging me to download the app, okay, because there are deals in which I am expected to shop more. Therefore, the note ends with a greeting, or the closing greeting, happy shopping. Okay, happy shopping. So from this credit card account, there's actually a lot of lessons that you can already derive from it. Okay? If you're a soc sci teacher, then you can teach economics, okay, spending behavior, okay, supply and demand, and how to create a demand among consumers, okay, how credit card companies work. Okay? Happy shopping, okay? If you're a language teacher, maybe you can analyze this as a piece of discourse in order to show your students how advertising works, okay? How to use, for example, euphemisms, how to use alliteration and other literary devices in order to make a more convincing and exciting message, okay? And we're only looking at a credit card statement, okay? This is also applicable to a lot. News stories, okay? In one tabloid, okay, an actress is described to be humahagulgol, according to the headline, no? That actress is humahagulgol. And I'm thinking, okay, why do you think, and probably you're thinking, why should the author write humahagulgol instead of umiiyak? Okay? What would be the difference in terms of the degrees of meaning when we use the word humahagulgol and umiiyak? Of course, okay, the intensity of humahagulgol is greater than that of umiiyak. And therefore, it can capture more audience attention. Okay? So credit card, news stories, okay, newspaper, etc. What else? Okay. This excerpt, which I'm not going to read, I don't think I have a lot of time to read everything, but if you compare it with the first one, this is very neutral. Why? Because I got it from a journal article. Okay? So, the language here is very neutral, okay, and it is simply informing the readers of the background of, perhaps you might find it difficult to read because of the small font, but it's only informing readers, okay, how the field of language teaching and literature teaching is spread across the globe. And so the tone is very informative, it is objective, okay, and it is even using direct quotes, because this portion, okay, this portion of the article is simply reporting, okay. It is not making a claim or assertion, but it is only reporting, okay. Why? Because of the medium. It is a journal article, okay. You are supposed to maintain that objective tone. Your audience, fellow academics. So therefore, you need to be thorough in your description and you have to avoid biases. Situation is a peer-reviewed material, double-blind peer-reviewed material, okay? At the same time, okay, so that's why you as the writer or the author should try your best in order to convey your thoughts in a very objective manner. Okay, sample C. We're moving on. Okay, we're now looking at a novel. One of my favorites lately, especially during this ECQ, is I've been watching a lot of alien invasion movies, and one of the movies that I've seen was a Tom Cruise rendition of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Okay, so yes, this is also a very potent tool. Maybe you can begin by asking the students to look at the book cover, okay, based on the picture, and ask them what you think it's about, okay, and then look at the situation, okay, like what? If you're going to read the opening lines, look at the time period that is being portrayed in the novel. It says, no one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century. So you're looking toward almost the end of the Industrial Revolution, okay? And then later on, this Industrial Revolution would give birth to the Information Age. And so you would see civilization going on and on and on, okay, improving at a much faster rate, okay? So, let's look at the excerpt. No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. That as men busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swam and multiplied in a drop of water. Okay. Think about it. Number one, situation. Okay, it's almost toward the end of the 20th century, or rather 19th century, meaning 1800s going to the 1900s. Okay, Writer-author H.G. Wells, who's known to be one of the fathers of science fiction, but at the same time is also a what they call this, a critic, a social critic. Okay, so he would love to write materials that would expose the condition of the society. Okay, audience. So think of the audience during his time. Okay, think of Industrial Revolution. People are running after profit. Okay, so he was living in a profit-driven society, and they're producing a lot of goods. And it seems that people are starting to become apathetic of each other, and maybe people at that time are not even asking the whole point of existence, the whole point of life. Okay, and medium, a novel. Okay, people had more time to read. Okay, during probably at that time. But if it's a novel, then we are also then it also goes to show that maybe what H.G. Wells is addressing is more of the educated class. Okay, not necessarily those who cannot read and write, of course, because how can you read and access a lengthy, a copious novel such as this one if you haven't undergone a certain degree of education in this case? Okay, so there, letter P, purpose. Again, it would seem that right from the opening lines, it seems like it is a philosophical treatise. Okay, asking us to really evaluate the purpose, the meaning of our existence, and how can we arrive at that conclusion. Then we look at the devices. Okay, number one, no one would have believed. Okay, so it's a sweeping generalization. Okay, a hyperbole. Okay, if you're going to look at rhetorical devices, no one would have believed. Okay, it's a hyperbole that everyone, okay, was, apathetic to what's going on. In the last years of the 19th century, again, Industrial Revolution, that this world was being watched keenly and closely. Look at the repetition, keenly and closely. Okay, look at that level of scrutiny. Okay, by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. So the use of antithesis. Okay, so there's the use of antithesis to compare man with aliens. Okay, aliens who are more intelligent than us, but at the same time, and we can get a hint in the story, okay, what's going to happen later on, at the same time vulnerable, because they were also as mortal as his own, meaning they're also prone to death, just like man. It's just that they are a little bit more or intelligent. Okay, that as men busy themselves about their various concerns, okay, which somehow communicates to you that sense of apathy. They were scrutinized. This parallelism shows us this sense of apathy. They were scrutinized and studied, perhaps, watch out for the simile, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swam and multiply in a drop of water. Very nice, no? Very nice use of device, very nice use of simile. It is, man is looking at microorganisms from a microscope. But at the same time, in this novel, we here are the microorganisms. Okay? And so, in this case, through this use of devices, maybe H.G. Wells would like to share with us the seeming insignificance of all our daily activities, that we have to think of what is more important, that we should not be arrogant, etc., etc. Okay, he did not directly or explicitly state those lessons outright, but rather, with the use of this of his commentary, with the artistic choice of words, he was able to float that message. Okay, and again, we were able to extract that message using the Swamp's model, who says what to whom, through which medium, and with what effect. Okay. If you want, maybe we can take a look at this time an epic poem. Probably a lot of you are familiar with the Divine Comedy, an excerpt from the Inferno. Okay, this is the canto about avariciousness. Okay, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth layer of hell where the avaricious have been. And again, just like H.G. Wells, it is talking about how important or insignificant are our pursuits. Okay, the thought of yours is empty. Okay, it's Virgil talking. Okay, to Dante, no? Well, as portrayed by Dante, it's as if that Virgil is talking to him while showing him the fourth layer of hell. And at the same time, this novel, or rather, sorry, not novel, this epic poem, which was written back in the Middle Ages or toward the end of the Middle Ages, have moralistic religious overtones. Again, a situation, writer, Alighieri, audience would be the people of their time, and the church would be the greatest actor in their society. No? The medium is the epic poem, which was written in Latin, which means that it is accessible to the educated class, and most people who were educated during the time of the Middle Ages were the clergy. No? So you can already deduce the kind of audience that Dante had in mind when he wrote this. So let me read again. That thought of yours is empty. The undiscerning life that made them filthy now renders them unrecognizable. Ill-giving and ill-keeping have robbed both of the fair world and set them to this fracas. What that is like, my words did not embellish, because Virgil is demonstrating to Dante how hell looks like. Now you can see, my son, how brief the sport of all those goods that are in fortune's scare, which the tribe of men contend and brawl. For all gold that is or ever was beneath the moon could never offer rest even to the one of these exhausted spirits. Again, okay, just like H.G. Wells, Dante was talking about how insignificant our pursuits are, how trivial they are, okay, and it would seem that, and we can derive rather that kind of realization by close examination of his text in relation with the communication situation at that time, in relation with the audience, in relation with the medium, the writer, the purpose, etc. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so what are our key takeaways for this session? Okay, so we've seen that communication is everywhere. Communication can be found in a literary text such as this one, okay, Dante, an epic poem, or you can find it in a novel, a short story, or you can find it in a news article, you can find it in the signboard, in a credit card statement. So communication is everywhere, and therefore, okay, my message is for us to make our lessons more relevant to our kids. Let us try to make the most out of authentic materials. Let us supplement our lessons with everyday materials, may it be from literature, okay, may it be from bills, may it be from whatnot, no? From signboards. Let's try to use all of them together, okay, in conjunction with our instructional materials to give our students a more holistic learning experience. After all, as teachers, we are preparing our students to navigate in real life. Okay, so thank you so much. Now, I'd like to see if there are some questions that I'd like to address. Okay, there aren't too many. Okay, there aren't. Yes?
I love kasi.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just see, and let's try if no, and I hope that, and I encourage you to use a lot more authentic materials. Okay, maybe I'd like also to share with you one experience I had in a journalism workshop, wherein I use another authentic material. You see, in a journalism workshop, normally elementary schools would hold a journalism workshop to prepare their students for the division school's press conference, which is the precursor to the regional school's press conference, and then the national school's press conference. So it's a competition of school newspapers. And I was asked to conduct a training for both the coaches and the kids, okay? And so, my goal for the training was, because I'm pretty sure that TEPED is already giving the students the template, the nitty-gritty of the style of what a journalistic article should look like. So, I decided to focus instead on the principle or the essence or the philosophy behind journalism. And in order to do that, I actually alluded to a show, no? A show that I'm sure that the kids are watching because it's a Sunday night popular magazine show that features this paranormal investigator. And I'm sure that, all the kids, love watching that show. And so I alluded to that show in order to teach, for example, the principles of news. What makes news? The elements of news. Okay? And in conjunction with the elements of news, the structure by which a news article is written, even a feature article is written, okay, and how to capture the audience. Okay? So, basically, the key takeaway there, after watching that segment from that popular magazine show, and after everything, and after the lectures was, okay, their news has to stand out. Okay, while the template may have already been given to them, they need to appreciate the communication situation because it will also make their writing rich. If they're just going to follow the template, I give them a scenario. For example, if you are going to compete with 100 other kids from your division, okay? If you're going to compete with 100 other kids from your division and you're just going to follow the template, then how will that be good? Okay? So what happened there is when they were able to get the news, the principle of news writing, that they were be able to apply it, this principle in their own articles, and hence, the nice thing about it is that eventually they won. And I guess there are already comments, questions. Let me see, what's that? Okay, so there. Okay, so maybe, I guess, that's it, Pansit. I guess, my time is already up. So thank you so much for listening. If there are more questions, then please feel free to share it via the comment thread, or PM Vibal for the questions, and PM your key takeaways from this from this morning's lesson. And I hope to see you again in one of the future lessons. So thank you so much. Have a nice day. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.